The black sedan pulled up to the gate of the estate just after midnight, and Luca Moretti felt the blood drain from his face when he saw who stepped out. Elena. After 5 years of silence, 5 years of private investigators turning up nothing, 5 years of wondering if she was alive or dead, there she was, flanked by two children who couldn't have been older than 4. Twins, a boy and a girl, both dark-haired, both staring up at the security camera with eyes that looked eerily familiar. "Boss," Marco's voice crackled through the intercom. Luca was already moving toward the door, his heart hammering in a way it hadn't since the night Elena disappeared. The night he'd come home to find their penthouse ransacked, blood on the bathroom tile, and no trace of the woman he'd married 6 months prior. The woman who'd been 3 months pregnant when she vanished. He'd torn apart half of Chicago looking for her. He'd called in every favor, leaned on every contact from New York to Miami. Nothing. It was as if she'd been erased from existence. And now she was back. With 2 children. The math didn't work. Elena had been 3 months along when she disappeared. These kids were 4 years old, maybe closer to 5. Which meant, "Open the gate," Luca said into his phone, his voice rougher than he intended. "But keep eyes on the perimeter." He watched through the window as the gate rolled open and Elena walked through, holding both children by the hand. She moved with the same fluid grace he remembered, but there was something different about her now. Harder. The Elena he'd known had been a substitute art teacher with paint perpetually under her fingernails and a smile that could disarm his worst moods. This Elena wore designer clothes that fit too well to be off the rack, and her expression was unreadable as she approached the front door. Luca opened it before she could knock. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Elena's dark eyes swept over him, the gray threading through his black hair that hadn't been there 5 years ago, the new scar along his jaw from the Santoro hit, the exhaustion he knew was carved into every line of his face. He catalogued the changes in her too, the lean muscle in her arms, the expensive cut of her navy dress, the way she angled her body slightly in front of the children, protective, wary. "Elena," he said, and her name felt foreign on his tongue, like a language he'd forgotten how to speak. Her voice was steady, controlled. "We need to talk." He looked down at the twins. The girl had Elena's nose, delicate and slightly upturned. The boy had a dimple in his left cheek that Luca saw every time he looked in the mirror. Both of them stared up at him with identical expressions of cautious curiosity. "Marco," Luca called over his shoulder, "take the kids to the kitchen." "They don't eat sugar after 8, Elena said quickly, then softer. "Please." Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully neutral, despite the fact that Luca knew his second-in-command was internally screaming with questions. "Come on, Piccoli," Marco said gently, crouching down to the children's level. "You like hot chocolate? We got the good stuff." The girl looked up at Elena, who gave a small nod. Only then did both children release their mother's hands and follow Marco into the house. Luca noticed the boy looked back twice, checking to make sure Elena was still there. When they were alone in the foyer, Elena finally met his eyes fully. Luca let out a short, bitter laugh. "You disappeared for 5 years. No note, no call, no proof of life. I thought you were dead, Elena. I thought someone had taken you because of me, because of what I do. I've been living with that guilt every goddamn day." "Someone did take me because of you," Elena said quietly. "And I've been living with that reality every goddamn day. So yes, Luca, I need your help, because the people who took me—" The air between them went cold. Luca's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Inside! He led her to his study, a dark-paneled room that smelled of leather and old whiskey. He poured himself 2 fingers of bourbon and downed it before turning to face her. Elena stood by the bookshelf, her fingers trailing over the spine of a first edition Dante she'd given him for his birthday 7 years ago, back when things were simple, or at least, simpler. "Start talking," Luca said, "from the beginning." Elena took a breath. 5 years ago, I was taken by a man named Viktor Kozlov, Russian Bratva. He had a score to settle with you over the Atlantic City port deal. Luca's jaw tightened. The Atlantic City situation had been a bloodbath. The Russians had tried to muscle in on his shipping routes, and he'd responded with overwhelming force. He'd thought the matter was settled when Kozlov's operation crumbled and the man himself disappeared. "Kozlov's dead." "You saw a body," Elena corrected. "Victor's younger brother, Dmitri. Victor wanted you to think he was gone so he could operate freely." Elena's voice cracked slightly, the first sign of emotion breaking through her controlled exterior. "That's what I told you because I was late, and I'd taken 3 tests and they were all positive. But 2 days before I disappeared, I started bleeding. I went to the doctor. False positive. Stress, they said. My hormone levels were off." She trailed off, and Luca felt something inside him fracture. All this time, he'd imagined her pregnant and terrified. Imagined the baby, his baby, born in some hellhole while he couldn't protect them. And it had been a lie. Not her lie, but biology's cruel trick. "The twins," he said. Elena's eyes met his, and there was genuine fear there. "That's the problem, Luca." The words hung in the air like smoke from a gun. Luca set down his glass before he could throw it. "Explain." Elena's hands were shaking now, and she wrapped them around herself. "Victor kept me in a compound outside of Minsk for 6 months. He wanted information, your routes, your contacts, your vulnerabilities." She closed her eyes. "It doesn't matter what he did. I didn't break." But then his approach changed. He brought in a doctor, a geneticist. "Elena, they had samples of your DNA," she continued, her voice going distant. "Blood from a crime scene," they said. "Hair from a restaurant you frequented. The doctor performed in vitro fertilization. But here's the thing. Victor couldn't help himself. He had the doctor create 2 embryos, one using your DNA." Luca's world tilted. "No. It's very possible. And when I woke up from the procedure, I was pregnant with twins. I carried them for 9 months not knowing which one came from you and which one came from the man who destroyed my life. The geneticist who did it had an attack of conscience and helped me escape when the babies were 6 months old. We've been running ever since. I changed our names 17 times. I dyed my hair, wore contacts, learned to shoot a gun and hotwire a car. But 3 days ago, Victor's men found us in Portland. They killed my neighbor. They tried to take the kids." Luca's mind was working through the implications faster than his heart could process them. "The geneticist who helped me escape died 2 years ago. The records were destroyed. Victor has been searching for us because he wants his child back. Or to kill yours out of spite. I can't tell anymore, but he'll never stop looking." There was a soft knock at the door. Marco stuck his head in. "Boss, the kids are asking for their mom. And we got a problem. One of the perimeter cameras just went dark." Luca was moving before Marco finished the sentence. He pulled a Glock from the desk drawer and checked the magazine. "Get Elena and the kids to the safe room. Now." He looked at Elena. "We're not done talking, but right now, I need you to trust me like you did before everything went to hell." Elena hesitated for only a second before nodding. "The boy's name is Nico. The girl is Arya. Whatever happens, Luca, they're just kids." "Neither did you," Luca said. Then he was out the door, moving through his house with the fluid efficiency of a man who'd prepared for exactly this scenario 100 times over. The safe room was in the basement, accessible through a hidden panel behind the wine cellar. Luca watched on his phone's security feed as Marco ushered Elena and the twins inside, then sealed the reinforced steel door. On another screen, he could see the northeast camera feed was indeed dead, but the adjacent camera showed movement, 3 figures in black, moving with military precision toward the east entrance. His phone buzzed, a text from his head of security. 6 hostiles, armed. 2 more circling to the west entrance. Luca pulled up the house-wide intercom. "This is not a drill. We have hostile entry. Assume armed and dangerous." He made his way to the control room where his security chief, a former Marine named Chen, was already coordinating the response. "They're good," Chen said without preamble. "Took out the camera without triggering the alarm." "That's the point," Luca said grimly. "They wanted to get in quietly." Luca pulled up the camera feeds for every room. His men were moving into position, creating a defensive perimeter around the safe room. "Tell them to funnel the hostiles toward the east gallery." For the next 10 minutes, Luca watched his home turn into a tactical battlefield. The intruders were professional, Russian military, if he had to guess. But they didn't know the layout like his people did. One by one, his men picked them off, using rubber bullets and tactical takedowns. By the time the last hostile was zip-tied in the gallery, Luca had 5 captives and 0 casualties on his side. He walked into the gallery with his gun loose at his side. The 5 men were lined up on their knees, hands secured behind their backs. All wore black tactical gear with no identifying marks. All had the same dead-eyed expression of soldiers who knew they weren't leaving this room free. Luca crouched in front of the one in the center, the one who'd been moving like a leader. "I'm going to make this very simple." The man spat at Luca's feet. Chen moved to strike him, but Luca held up a hand. He pulled out his phone and made a call. It was answered on the first ring. "Dmitri, I have 5 of your brother's men in my house." There was a pause. Then a rough, accented voice. "Moretti, you should answer your door more carefully. Victor is done playing games." "Funny, I was about to say the same thing. Tell Victor if he comes near Elena or those kids again, I'll finish what I should have finished in Atlantic City. The right way, this time." Dimitri's laugh was ugly. "Victor told me about the doctor's game. Smart, yes? One of those children carries Kozlov blood. Maybe it's the boy, maybe the girl. Are you prepared to raise your enemy's child as your own?" Luca ended the call and pocketed his phone. He looked at the 5 men, then at Chen. "Process them. Get everything you can, where they're staying, how many more are in the city, what their extraction plan was." "You're not going to—" "No," Luca said flatly. "We're not like them." He made his way back to the safe room and knocked 3 times, then once, then twice, the code he'd just made up, but Elena must have been watching the camera feed because the door clicked open immediately. She stood in the doorway with a fire extinguisher raised over her head, ready to swing. Behind her, the twins were huddled on a leather couch, holding hands. "It's over," Luca said. Elena lowered the extinguisher slowly. "They'll come back." Luca looked past her to the children, Nico and Arya, one his, one not, both terrified. "Come on." He led them upstairs to the east wing, which hadn't been used in years. Elena put the twins to bed in adjoining rooms, and Luca stood in the hallway, listening to her read them a story about a brave mouse and a friendly lion. Her voice was soft and patient, nothing like the hardened survivor who'd stood in his foyer an hour ago. When she finally emerged, she looked exhausted. "They'll need their things from the car, clothes, toothbrushes, Arya's stuffed rabbit." Luca paused. "Elena, what you said before, about the DNA, there has to be a way to test them." "There is," Elena said, "but Victor has eyes everywhere. The moment we submit DNA to any lab, legitimate or otherwise, he'll know. He'll know where we are, and he'll send an army instead of a squad. We can't risk it. We find Victor first." Elena's eyes were hard now, glinting with something that looked like the Elena he'd known, but sharper, forged in fire. "I didn't spend 5 years learning to survive just to roll over now. I'm done running, Luca. But I need your resources, your network. When we find out which child is his and which is yours, because we will find out eventually, you have to promise me you won't treat them differently. They're both mine." I carried them both. I love them both. Luca looked at the closed doors where the twins slept. I can't promise that. I don't know how to raise a child, Elena, let alone two. Then you'll learn. Elena stepped closer, and he could smell her shampoo, still the same lavender and honey scent from 5 years ago. You want to make up for what happened? You want to protect us? Then you protect both of them, equally. Before he could respond, Marco appeared at the end of the hallway. Boss, we got a problem. Chen just called. The feds are already at the federal building asking questions about the 5 guys we dropped off, and they mentioned your name specifically. Luca cursed. Victor's playing chess. There's more, Marco said grimly. One of the guys started talking. He gave up an address, a warehouse in the meatpacking district. It's a trap, Elena said immediately. Probably, Luca agreed, but it's also an opportunity. Victor thinks he's 3 moves ahead. The warehouse sat at the edge of the Chicago River, a squat brick building that had once housed a legitimate butcher operation before the business went under in the 90s. Now it was just another abandoned property in a neighborhood the city had forgotten. Luca sat in the back of an unmarked van 2 blocks away, watching the building through a high-powered scope. 3 guards on the ground level, Chen reported. 2 on the roof. No sign of Victor himself, but there's definitely activity inside. Can't tell from here. Could be workers. Luca lowered the scope. Elena sat across from him, dressed in black tactical gear that Marco had scrounged up from somewhere. She'd insisted on coming, and Luca hadn't had the energy to argue. Besides, he'd seen the way she handled the fire extinguisher. She'd learned more than just survival in the last 5 years. If we go in loud, anyone inside becomes a hostage or a casualty, Luca said. There's a third option, Elena said. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. I know the layout. Victor kept blueprints of all his properties in his office in Minsk. I have a photographic memory, something he didn't know about me. There's a service entrance on the south side. It leads directly to the basement. Chen raised an eyebrow. I memorized everything I could, Elena said. Names, addresses, account numbers, operational procedures. I knew I'd need ammunition when I finally made my move against Victor. Luca felt something shift in his chest. This woman wasn't the Elena he'd married. She was someone new. Someone forged in captivity and desperation. Someone harder and more dangerous than he'd ever given her credit for. Chen, take the main team and stage at the north entrance. Make it look like you're preparing for a frontal assault. Draw their attention. Luca checked his weapon. Victor wants me dead almost as much as he wants those kids. If there's any chance he's inside, he'll want to face me personally. 20 minutes later, Luca found himself standing in front of a rusted service door with Elena at his shoulder and Marco covering their 6. The door was locked, but Marco made quick work of it with a pick. Inside, the smell of old meat and mildew hit like a physical force. They moved through the darkness with flashlights mounted on their weapons, sweeping each corner methodically. The basement was a maze of old storage rooms and hanging rails where carcasses had once been processed. Now it was just empty hooks and shadows. Stairs ahead, Elena whispered. 2 flights up. They climbed in silence. At the top of the stairs, Luca could hear voices, Russian, fast and urgent. He recognized Victor's voice immediately, that particular cadence that turned every sentence into a threat. Don't care what Moretti thinks he can do. The twins are mine. One of them carries my blood and I will have my heir. The Moretti child is irrelevant. Luca felt Elena go rigid beside him. He put a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. Not yet. Another voice, younger. The men we sent were captured. Good. Let him prepare. Let him waste his time protecting children while we dismantle his operation piece by piece. Luca's blood went cold. It's a distraction, he breathed. The kids were bait. Elena's eyes went wide. The ledger. The ledger. A leather-bound book containing 5 years of shipping records, payoff schedules, and political connections that had cost him a fortune to obtain. It had been Elena's idea to keep it, back when she'd been helping him organize his legitimate business fronts. The ledger was insurance, proof that could bring down half the political establishment in 3 states. "It's in the safe in my office," Luca said. "Then we need to—" The door burst open. 6 men flooded into the stairwell, weapons raised. Luca fired twice, dropping the first 2 before they could get a shot off. Marco took out a third, but the remaining 3 had cover now, and bullets began chewing up the walls around them. Marco shouted, "Get to the office!" Luca grabbed Elena's hand and they ran, crashing through a side door into the warehouse proper. The space was cavernous, filled with old equipment and shipping pallets. Gunfire erupted behind them as Marco and his team engaged Victor's men. They made it to a loading dock, and Luca kicked open an emergency exit. Outside, the Chicago night was cold and sharp. His car was 3 blocks away, too far. He pulled out his phone to call for extraction, and that's when he saw the alert. Home security breach, East Wing, the safe room. "No," Luca breathed. "No, no, no." Elena grabbed the phone from his hand. Her face went white. "He sent another team." They ran. Luca called Chen as they sprinted toward the car. "Get to my house now, East Wing, safe room." "Boss, we're pinned down at the warehouse." "I don't care if you have to shoot your way out." The drive back was a blur of red lights and screeching tires. Luca pushed his bulletproof sedan to 90 miles per hour through Chicago streets, weaving through late-night traffic while Elena made call after call on his phone, trying to reach anyone at the house. No answer. When they screeched through the front gate, which was standing open, the security panel sparked and destroyed. Luca knew they were too late. The front door hung off its hinges. Inside, 2 of his men were down, unconscious, but breathing. The house had been cleared with professional efficiency. They found the safe room door open, empty. Elena made a sound like a wounded animal. She collapsed against the wall, and Luca saw the invincible woman he'd just discovered crumble into the terrified mother she'd been trying not to be. "No," she whispered. "No, no, please." Luca was already on the phone. "I want every camera in the city scrubbed, every traffic cam, every security system, every goddamn doorbell. Find a black SUV leaving my neighborhood in the last 20 minutes. Wake up everyone on the payroll. Call in every favor." He knelt beside Elena. "We'll get them back." She looked up at him with eyes full of tears and rage. "You don't understand. Victor doesn't just want his child. He wants to hurt you." The words settled like ice in Luca's veins. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered, putting it on speaker. Victor's voice was smooth, almost pleasant. "By now, you've discovered your house is empty. Don't worry. The children are safe. If you harm one hair, you'll what? Kill me? You've been trying to do that for 5 years. Here's what's going to happen. You have the Atlantic City ledger. I want it." "Yes, you see, I've decided I want an heir after all. My geneticist is dead, so we'll have to do this the old-fashioned way. Blood test, right there in front of you. Whichever child is mine, I keep. The other one you can have." Luca's hand tightened on the phone. "I'm practical. Oh, and Moretti? You have 4 hours. After that, I decide I only need 1 child anyway, and I start with the one who's probably yours. The boy has your dimple, I'm told." The line went dead. Elena was shaking. "He'll kill them both. Once he has the ledger, he has no reason to keep either one alive. They're witnesses. They're leverage." Luca stood, his mind already racing through possibilities. He won't kill them. Not if he thinks one is his. Victor's ego won't allow it. He wants an heir, a legacy. Luca pulled out his phone and made a call. "I need you to do something for me. Something that might get you killed." The voice on the other end was female, crisp, and professional. "I need you to fake DNA results." There was a long pause. "I'm asking you to save 2 innocent children from a Russian mobster who's killed more people than either of us can count." Another pause. "Send me the details. And Moretti? After this, we're even." He ended the call and looked at Elena. Special Agent Sarah Reeves. She's FBI, Organized Crime Division. She's been after Victor for 3 years, but he's slippery. I've fed her information before. It's why the feds tolerate my existence. How can you fake a DNA test? Victor will bring his own people. No, he won't. He thinks he has us cornered. He thinks we're desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. Luca grabbed his keys. But first, we need to get that ledger. They drove back to the house in tense silence. The ledger was still in the safe, undisturbed. Apparently, Victor's team had been focused solely on the extraction. Luca pulled out the heavy leather book and flipped through it. 5 years of secrets. Enough to bring down senators, judges, police chiefs. Power and insurance all in one. His phone buzzed with a location. Navy Pier, South Dock. 3 a.m. He checked his watch. 2 hours. We need to prepare, Luca said. If Victor's smart, and he is, he'll have sharpshooters, escape routes, and contingencies for every move we make. This is his play, his rules. Elena loaded a magazine into a Glock with practiced efficiency. Navy Pier at 3 a.m. was a ghost town. The tourist attractions were dark, the shops shuttered. The only sound was the gentle lap of Lake Michigan against the pilings and the distant hum of the city. Luca stood on the south dock with the ledger in a briefcase, watching the water and waiting. Elena was 50 feet behind him, hidden in the shadows with a sniper rifle borrowed from Chen's personal collection. She'd proven herself a decent shot on the drive over, putting 3 rounds through a target at 200 yards. Not military grade, but good enough. Luca's phone buzzed. He looked down at a text. Pier 7. Come alone. Bring the ledger. He walked slowly, his footsteps echoing on the wooden planks. Pier 7 was at the far end, isolated and perfect for an ambush. As he approached, he saw them. 2 black SUVs parked in a V formation, headlights on, creating a pool of harsh light. And in the center, 2 small figures. Nico and Arya stood hand in hand, their faces streaked with tears but otherwise unharmed. Behind them stood Viktor Kozlov. Luca had seen photos, but the man in person was different. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and a face that might have been handsome, if not for the cruelty in his eyes. He wore an expensive suit and held a pistol loosely at his side. "Moretti," Victor called out. "Punctual," Luca demanded. Victor gestured, and a thin man in a white coat emerged from one of the SUVs carrying a metal case. "My personal physician. He'll take blood samples from each child, run them against samples we already have of your DNA. You don't, but I'm a man of my word, Moretti. I want what's mine. If one of these children is my blood, I'll raise them as a Kozlov. If neither is mine, well, that would be disappointing." The doctor knelt beside Nico first. The boy flinched but didn't cry as the needle pierced his skin. Then Arya. She whimpered, and Luca felt something crack in his chest. These children, regardless of whose DNA they carried, were terrified, innocent, and he'd brought them into this world of violence and fear. "Give me the ledger," Victor said. Luca held it up. At the same time, Victor smiled. It was an ugly expression. "The doctor will mark them. A simple bracelet. Green for Kozlov blood, red for yours." The 20 minutes that followed were the longest of Luca's life. He stood in the cold night air, watching the doctor work with his equipment. Nico and Arya huddled together, and he could see them whispering to each other. Brave kids, stronger than they should have to be. Finally, the doctor stood. He walked to Victor and handed him a piece of paper. Victor read it, his expression unreadable. Then he looked at the twins and smiled. "Interesting," he said. He walked to Arya and snapped a green bracelet around her tiny wrist. She pulled away, but he held firm. Then he went to Nico and snapped a red bracelet on him. "The girl is mine," Victor announced. "The boy is yours. A daughter, I can work with that. She'll be raised properly, taught the ways of our family. She'll never remember you, Elena." Elena's voice rang out from the darkness. She stepped into the light, rifle raised. Victor didn't even flinch. "Ah, there she is. The woman who got away." Did you really think you could hide from me forever, Elena? You found us because I let you, Elena said coldly. I was tired of running, so I made a choice. The ledger? Please, I have copies. Not the ledger. Elena gestured to Luca with the rifle. You think Luca Moretti is going to walk away now? You think he'll let you take a child, any child, after what you've done? You've made an enemy of the most dangerous man in Chicago. Congratulations, Victor. Victor's expression finally shifted. Uncertainty flickered in his eyes. The test is done. The girl is mine by blood. The scene erupted into chaos. Victor's men drew weapons, but they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. The FBI had surrounded the pier. In the confusion, Luca ran forward and grabbed both twins, shielding them with his body as he dragged them away from the line of fire. Elena was there a second later, her rifle aimed at Victor's chest. Victor screamed, "The girl is my blood!" You have falsified results, Agent Reeves said calmly. Courtesy of a very talented lab technician who owed me a favor. Neither of those children is yours, Kozlov. They're both Moretti's. The whole twin scenario? A lie told by a geneticist who didn't have the stomach to actually use your DNA. He used Moretti's samples for both embryos and told you what you wanted to hear so you'd stop torturing Elena. He confessed before he died. Luca stared at Elena. Both, Elena whispered. I've known for 3 years. The geneticist reached out to me before he died, told me the truth. But I kept it secret because as long as Victor thought one was his, he had a reason to keep them alive. Nico and Arya clung to Luca's legs, and he realized with a start that they were his. Both of them. His children. His blood. Get him out of my sight, Reeves said, and her agents moved in to cuff Victor. The Russian was still screaming, still insisting the tests were real, but his voice faded as they dragged him away. Luca knelt and pulled both twins into his arms. They were shaking, terrified, but alive. Safe. I'm sorry, he said, though he wasn't sure if he was talking to them, or Elena, or the universe. Don't be sorry, Nico said, his voice small but steady. Mama said you were a good man. Arya nodded against his chest. Luca looked up at Elena. She was crying now, all the walls finally coming down. They're yours, she said. Both of them. I should have told you sooner, but you were trying to keep them alive, Luca finished. You did what you had to do. You survived. You protected them. Elena, you're the hero here. Agent Reeves approached. We'll need statements from all of you, but Moretti, that ledger. Luca handed over the briefcase without hesitation. It's yours. Everything in there. Luca stood, a twin holding each of his hands. But I'm hoping you'll consider that I have 2 kids now who need a father. Reeves studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Witness protection. New identities for all 4 of you. You testify against everyone in that ledger, help us build cases, and in exchange you get to disappear. Be a family somewhere quiet, somewhere safe. Luca looked at Elena. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. He asked her. I think, Elena said slowly, that I've been running for 5 years. I think I'm tired. I think these kids deserve a normal life, or as normal as we can give them. And I think maybe, if we're very lucky and we work very hard, we could figure out how to be a family again. Elena reached out and took his free hand. We're not the same people we were 5 years ago, Luca. But maybe that's okay. Nico tugged on Luca's sleeve. No more running, Luca promised. We're going to find a house with a backyard. You'll go to school, make friends, play sports? Arya asked. Luca laughed. Actually laughed, for the first time in what felt like years. Yeah. 6 months later, Luca stood in the backyard of a modest house in Asheville, North Carolina, watching Nico and Arya chase a golden retriever puppy around the grass. Elena came out of the house with 2 glasses of lemonade. She handed one to Luca and stood beside him, her shoulder brushing his. They'd been rebuilding slowly. Therapy sessions, long conversations, learning to trust each other again. It wasn't perfect. There were nights when Elena woke up screaming. Nights when Luca couldn't sleep at all. Memories of everything they'd lost haunting him. But they were trying. Reeves called, Elena said. The trials are wrapping up. Last of the Atlantic City crowd took a plea deal. Life without parole. Maximum security. Elena sipped her lemonade. Yeah, Luca said. Arya ran up to them, the puppy tumbling after her. Dad! She threw a tennis ball, and Liberty bounded after it with enthusiastic clumsiness. Dad. The word still felt strange. Wonderful, but strange. Nico joined them, grass-stained and grinning. Luca exchanged a glance with Elena. They'd talked about this. How much to tell the kids about their past, about how they came to be. The therapist had suggested honesty, age-appropriate but truthful. We tell them, Elena said, kneeling down to Nico's level, that sometimes families go through hard things, that sometimes people make mistakes or bad people try to hurt us. But we also tell them that families stick together, that love is stronger than fear, and that no matter what happened before, we're together now. And liberty, Arya added seriously. And liberty, Elena agreed, smiling. That night, after the twins were in bed, Luca and Elena sat on the porch swing, listening to the crickets and watching the stars. The night was warm, peaceful, everything Luca had never thought he'd have again. Elena asked quietly, "Giving up everything you built?" Luca thought about it. The Chicago mansion, the network of loyal men, the fear and deference he'd commanded everywhere he went. All of it was gone now, traded for witness protection and a simple life in a small southern town. No, he said, I don't regret it. That life cost me 5 years with you. It cost our kids a normal childhood. It cost us peace. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder. I love you. I never stopped, even when I hated you. Luca kissed the top of her head. We both will, Elena said. Inside the house, a small voice called out, Mom? Dad? They went inside together, and Luca scooped up Nico while Elena settled Arya back under her covers. The nightmare was vague, something about being lost, about not being able to find his family. Classic anxiety for a kid who'd been through trauma. We're right here, Luca said, rubbing Nico's back. We're not going anywhere. You're safe. Your sister's safe. Mom and I are safe. I promise, Luca said. And for the first time in a long time, it was a promise he knew he could keep. He carried Nico back to bed, tucked him in beside his sister. They'd been sleeping in the same room since the kidnapping, finding comfort in each other's presence. Arya's stuffed rabbit was tucked between them. Liberty was curled up at the foot of the bed, already snoring softly. Luca and Elena stood in the doorway, watching their children sleep. His children, both of them. The relief of that truth still hit him sometimes. The fact that there had never been a choice to make, no terrible decision about loving one and rejecting the other. They were both his. They'd always been his. Elena whispered. Victor's obsession with bloodlines and heirs and genetic legacy, it was all meaningless. Because even if one of them had been his biologically, they would still have been ours. Biology doesn't make a family. Love does. Sacrifice does. You're right, Luca said. They closed the door softly and walked back to their own bedroom. It was small, nothing like the master suite in the Chicago mansion. But it was theirs. They were building something new here, something better. As Luca lay in bed that night, Elena curled against him. He thought about the path that had brought them here, the violence, the fear, the years of separation. Victor's twisted plan had been meant to destroy them, to create a situation so impossible, so morally agonizing, that it would tear them apart. Instead, it had brought them back together. In trying to make Luca choose between 2 children, Victor had failed to account for the most important thing. Luca would have chosen both. He would have fought for both. He would have loved both. Because that's what fathers do. And now, in this quiet house, in this quiet town, Luca Moretti was finally getting the chance to be the father he'd never thought he'd become. Not a mafia boss, not a criminal, not a man feared and respected in equal measure. Just a dad. Just a husband. Just a man trying to give his family the peaceful life they deserved. It was, he decided, the best role he'd ever played. Outside, the North Carolina night sang with crickets and possibility. Inside, a family slept soundly for the first time in years. And somewhere in a maximum security prison, Viktor Kozlov realized too late that bloodlines and genetic legacy meant nothing compared to the bonds forged in fire and choice. The Moretti family, fractured and scattered and broken, had become whole again. Not because of DNA, but because of love.